Hey, Rabbi.
Hello, good morning, everyone. How are you?
Morning.
Okay. Hi, Will.
Yeah,
Hi, Janet.
That's you. Hope everybody's staying as warm as you can.
That's possible. Yes. I'm not planning to go out today. So,
I gotcha. I gotcha. All right. Well, let's let's cue everything up and continue our learning. Let's do see. Um, yeah, we're talking about proper conduct. Let's see. Um, I think we kind of, I think this might be a little, I'm going to go a little further if that's okay. Um, this, I think, this talks about matters of travel and of laborers. And I think the reason why laborers are, part of this category is the idea is that when you're a laborer, you are very much subject to the whims of the people who are in charge, meaning you're not necessarily in a position to trail off on your own during work um, in order to pray. Um, if there are people who are uh, requiring your services at their whim, if that makes sense. Um,
it does. It does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would just think that when I think about on one hand, I feel like in our society sometimes we say to ourselves, oh, people are a little more understanding about day-to-day needs and a little more flexible if you need to take a coffee break, if you need to take this or that. And that's true certainly in some circumstances, but I mean, you read stories about people who work, for instance, in Amazon shipping, where uh, I mean, and I don't have the exact information in front of me to verify this, but there are just countless examples I've come across of people who are just they're racing against the clock to
Yeah.
fulfill orders and to put things into boxes, and I think that they're on their feet for hours and hours straight. So you know some of these conditions that perhaps uh, maybe one would think is a thing of the past isn't necessarily a thing of the past in some circumstances. um, and and the other thing, and I'm not sure whether they're going to cover this in this code, but imagine a soldier who's either in combat or has to stand guard or something like that, where okay, their work circumstances may have to supersede the timing of when prayers take place. So all of those are potentially factors. And so, all right, what should they pray when you're uh, when you don't necessarily have full control over your time?
I understand that's firsthand. That's the situation, the U.S. military. I just wonder if the IDF makes any accommodations. Of course, if they get the Orthodox to sign up, maybe the ones that are
No.
signing up don't have a big problem.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know there is at some point. I remember, like, I actually got to see a copy of a Siddur that is given to members of the IDF. And the understanding is that, because first of all, it has to be pretty compact because you never know when you have to, be on the move. And
I've got one of those from, I
I think they do what
think
they
it's
can.
probably was the Air Force chaplain gave it to you. You know, I was in the Army, but anyway, it's for the U.S. military. It's a little pocket size one, and I got a pocket size Tor. Well, it's of course it's bigger, but it's not it's small enough you can still stick both of either one of them in your pocket or both of them.
sure, sure. Sorry, Jan, you were saying?
No, I was just saying, Janet, yeah, they do. I think they just do whatever they can. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't stop. They don't stop in the middle of combat or what to pray. Obviously, they. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
they pray. I mean, my uncle. I had an
Mhm.
uncle. I never knew him, who was killed at the invasion of Okinawa. Had a prayer book in his pocket
Mm,
at the time. I mean, I think it was very common, and my mother said he was never religious, so he must have been, you know. Anyway, I think it's very common for soldiers to carry small prayer books in their pockets, and they just do what they can whenever they can. I mean, I encountered this last time we were there. We volunteered somewhat at the Lone Soldier Base in Jerusalem,
oh, great. Okay,
and
sure.
there were some soldiers who were clearly very religious, like with the payas and the whole thing, who were at the Lone Soldier Base probably because their families had disowned them for joining the IDF.
Mhm.
So I assume, they just pray whenever they can. You don't stop your military duties to pray. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's essential, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of understood. So what they're trying to do is provide some sort of roadmap for people who are like, okay, we only have limited time. What do we do? Right? What's most essential? So, all
I
right.
see.
So we have this idea. All right, in an extenuating circumstances, such as when one is on the road or when one was standing in a place where one is distracted, and one fears that they will interrupt one. Or if one is not able to pray the full Amidah prayer with intention, okay, so in other words, if there are circumstances beyond our control, one prays Havinenu, which is the digest version of the middle 13 Amidah blessings, after the first three blessings of the Amidah, and after it, we'll say the last three blessings of the Amidah, and it is necessary to say them while standing. Okay. So what is the Havinenu? Essentially, I mean, as it describes, it's basically like they basically put the ideas of the middle of the weekday Amidah into one paragraph. Now, that paragraph, by the way, it is traditional when one is praying Ma'ariv to also say the Havinenu in addition to the Amidah. And one can ask, what's the point of that? And I think the answer to it is there really is no point to that. And in fact, there are numerous communities that have eliminated it from the Mariv service because it's like, well, why are you doing it twice, right? But the use of the Havinenu is that, all right, you sort of throw in all of these ideas into one paragraph, and the idea is that it's supposed to, cut down on the time. However, ideally, you are saying it while you are standing. And then when one arrives at one's house, meaning when you do actually have time, it is not necessary to go back and pray it again, right? You don't have to go back and you don't have to go back and do it again. And one does not pray Havinenu in the rainy season, and not at the departure of Shabbat, a Saturday night nor a holiday. The rainy season, I don't necessarily understand. I mean, maybe the idea is that, I don't know. I'm not sure why this is the case, but
So excuse me, Rabbi.
yeah, sure.
So when we say Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem during that period, we don't do the Havinenu. Would that be right?
That would be the indication. Although, this is something that I get the sense is not necessarily carried through in practice today. That there would be, literally half the year in which this isn't an option.
Right.
So
which is from Pesach to Sukkot, or the other way around, Sukkot to Pesach.
Sukkot to Pesach. Yeah, I mean, essentially that's what so that this isn't an option. So, I don't know. This is one of those cases where I would say that this is kind of, the section is kind of burying the lead, meaning if it's only an option half the time, you'd probably want to say that earlier. That's just my, sort of my being picky and as to how this was all written. So in other words, half the year you have an option of shortening things. And here's what I find slightly bizarre is that this is not an option during the rainy season. Well, you would think that if you're outside, that would be the time where having something that would make things more efficient would be helpful in case it actually starts raining. So I find this one puzzling. Does anyone have any consideration as to what this could, what the logic could be? Because I'm stumped.
No idea.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, listen, some of these things are not necessarily, they're not necessarily practiced today.
This is the rainy season right now.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So, all right. So then this next part is about about laborers, so the laborers who do their work near the proprietor, if the proprietor doesn't give them payment beyond their meals, they pray 18 blessings of the Amidah.
Beyond their meals.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I'm not sure yet. Let me see if it'll make a little more sense.
What does that mean? If it doesn't give them payment beyond their meals? It means it's the end of their workday?
I don't know.
Or they're working for no pay.
They only pay them with meals. They don't get any other pay.
Right. In other words, like you're basically just being paid, well, I wouldn't even say room and board. They're just being paid with board, I guess.
Right.
So in that circumstance, right, they don't get a salary. They simply get food. Then they're responsible for praying the full Amidah.
Point of prayer leader.
They do not descend before the ark. In other words, they do not appoint a prayer leader to lead them. And they do not raise their hands.
If they're Kohanim.
Right, if any of them are Kohanim. They don't recite the priestly blessings.
This is making no sense to me at all. But all right.
Yeah. Let's see.
There must have been a reason for it at the time, but I don't get it.
Yeah. And then if they are given payment,
they pray Havinenu.
Then they can pray the Havinenu. And nowadays, it is not the way of the proprietor, proprietor to be strict regarding this. And it's assumed that they hired them with the understanding that they will interrupt their work to pray the Shemona Esrei, meaning the full Amidah.
No.
Maybe, and this is only a guess. Maybe they're talking about if somebody is praying, if somebody is praying beyond their meals, or in other words, if someone is getting only meal payment, presumably they would have time to say the Amidah because maybe their work wouldn't be quite as arduous.
What does that mean, though? Pray beyond their meals. Does that mean like while they're eating, or does it mean after? Beyond meat to me means after.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I my sense is, I'm happy to take a look, in terms of commentaries here. Let's see if there are any commentaries that may be helpful here. Let's see. Do we have Mishnah Berurah? Let's see, Mishnah Berurah. Aval ein v'chulei shezehu ikuv v'nidol makid mipalinya b'chol yom kashar aval ein. Let's see. Ten v'chulei ki az makfid ha bal habayit imita vulit balel kol v'havulahu. Yeah, I don't think this is really answering this and answering that particular question. So I guess what we're talking about is, are you a salaried worker or are you simply
Maybe, yeah.
Like a worker who's basically just saying, hey, literally I will work for food.
Yeah. And that used to be the case, right? I mean, people certainly did work for food because otherwise they would have starved.
Right.
Oh, I see. They mean payment beyond their meals means that their payment is their meal.
Yeah, their meal is their
Now
payment.
I understand.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it in terms of time beyond, but no, that's not what they mean. They mean the payment is the meal. Okay, now I get it. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't give them payment beyond their meals. I see.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. No. I'm glad
that makes much more sense now.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Glad we were able to figure that out.
Because
so no,
it's just the common use of beyond has maybe changed since this was written. I don't know.
Sure. And I mean,
as a former editor, I would have done this differently, but it's all right.
I mean, look, I can't. It says, Sefaria Community Translation. Okay. I don't know how. I mean,
that makes sense, though. If you read it that way, it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and it didn't even occur to me that that's what it meant.
Sure, no worries.
So thank you, Julia.
Yeah. All right. So okay. So that's the distinction they make there. Then the one who is walking in a place where there are bands of wild animals or robbers prays, the needs of your people are numerous, etc. Let me look at the mipalel tzarchei imach meruvin v'chulei. And there is no need, not the first three blessings of the Amidah, and not for the final three. In other words, if you're in danger, you basically say, hey, God, the needs of your people are numerous. It's like, hey, God, just keep an eye out for us, please. It's essentially. In other words, if you are in really, in a very tenuous situation, then you can really shorten it.
This is
And-
this is a very strong visual image
yeah.
about running literally from the danger, either the wild animals or the robbers,
Or
till
Hamas,
they get to an inn
yeah.
of some kind.
Yeah.
Probably relevant today. There are soldiers who customarily pray, and this is relevant. I mean, if you're in a war,
Yeah. No,
I
no,
mean, clearly a lot
question.
of them, I don't know if you've seen the videos of them. Sorry,
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No,
carrying the body out of Gaza. They were praying.
yeah.
They didn't have books. They were all praying in unison because they know the prayers and because they're accustomed to praying. So
Yeah.
I suspect that they do a lot of praying while they're in Gaza too,
Yeah.
So according to these, maybe not exactly to these rules because they may not have read this paragraph, but I mean, probably. It seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it's like, and I recognize that sometimes when we talk through these, when we talk through some of these matters of, practical halakha, practical law, like, I mean, I recognize that some of these passages can feel maybe a bit dispassionate, can feel very kind of, in which they take the, some of the potential emotion out of it. And I don't want to remove that from all this. Um, uh, and it's, and I would say on a practical level, if you're, you know, if you're in a difficult position, if you're in a point where lives are in the balance, goodness knows I don't blame you. I don't think anyone in their right mind would blame somebody for not worrying so much about oh, am I going to pray the entire Amidah, or can I shorten it? Like, I mean, they've got other things on their minds.
Right. When I'm in a situation that's scary to me, be it snow or be it something else, I always pray. I don't pray the Amidah, but I always pray out loud.
Yeah.
and hope that it helps. But especially in Pittsburgh, when we lived there on the icy hills, when I took my kids to school, I would always pray going down that horrible hill.
Sure. No, I hear you. And I mean, 100%. I mean, I'll tell this story. When I was in rabbinical school, there was one time I was on the bus in Manhattan. I got off the bus, and the street sign, there was like a little street sign that had been removed, and there was literally like a little spike that was coming out of the ground, and I didn't see it, and I tripped over it, and I used my arms to catch my fall, and I wound up getting a hairline fracture on my humerus
That's
bone.
something I would do. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just like a very kind of I mean, like something that's just really, I mean, like it happens.
Yeah.
And I was, and there was, I had to go to, I went to the ER because I was in, horrendous pain.
I believe it.
And they said, okay, well, there's no way to surgically deal with this. You just have to have your arm in a sling for a few weeks while it heals. Okay, fine. So I remember I had my left arm in a sling for a few weeks.
Are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed, so I was, I mean, I go in that sense. I was, I got off a little easier, but um, so when people saw me in there, I mean, first of all, I mean, this is just an aside. I mean, so I had been married for less than a year at that point, and the number of people who walked up to me and said something to the effect of, "Oh, well, I guess the wife is,
Oh,
like I'm sorry, that's not okay to say. That's not a thing to joke about, and shame on you." Um, uh, but that's just an aside. The reason why I wanted to mention all this is because one of the one of my deans asked me, I mean, he was kind. He's like, "How are you? Are you okay?" And then he said, "What are you doing about tefillin?
Mhm.
Because you are supposed to wear the arm tefillin on
the
your,
left side.
yeah, on the
Yeah.
non-dominant
Your
arm."
heart. Yeah.
And I'm being right-handed, like I usually put it on the left arm. Well, it's like, well, how am I going to put on tefillin? I, and I just, I didn't know what, I kind of froze for a second and I said, "I haven't figured that out."
Yeah. I mean, what kind of a question was that? I mean, really.
It wasn't the great,
I mean, like,
it wasn't the greatest question.
obviously, if your arm is broken, come on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and so, and to his credit, he said, "Okay, okay." Like he wasn't going to push it. He wasn't going to be like, and it's like I could always just put on the head to fill in and let that be that, right?
Mhm.
God would forgive you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
God,
And thankfully, he didn't. This guy didn't push. This rabbi didn't push the envelope more than that. He's like, "Oh, okay, fine, fine."
I don't
Uh,
see that would be offensive, just that maybe he figured you figured out a way to do it because he didn't have any way to suggest. He thought maybe you figured out a way to do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe he just,
Did you
it's
do
like,
it one-handed anyway?
it's interesting. Like, what would happen? I mean, the challenge is with tefillin.
no, you'd have to straighten your arm.
Yeah, well, you have to straighten your arm, but and it's like, okay, could I put it on my right arm?
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, okay, okay, so there are two reasons why I couldn't, or why it would have been really difficult. One is that, um, first, like, it's like if I were to put it on my right arm, I'd have to attach it using my left arm, the one that I'm not
Exactly.
supposed to use.
oh,
Right.
it's supposed to be immobile so that the bone can knit.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
this is
And
like crazy,
yeah, and then the other thing is that to fit, like, you'd have to literally completely like untie and retie your tefillin to make it work for the other arm because of the way the knot is. So even if like somebody put it on for me, right?
Yeah.
Even if like it's like then I'd have to, it would just, I mean, yeah. So, um, so in other words, like, yeah, when things are a little, when things are a bit extreme, yeah, you're not necessarily going to think of this stuff. Um, Now, so going back to the text here, one may pray this, meaning this very brief, the needs of your people are numerous. One may pray this on the road as one is going, but if one is able to stand, one should stand. Meaning, if you can stand, like if you have a second and you can stand in place and say it, do. But if you can't, you can't, is sort of the part they leave out. And when one arrives at a settlement and one's mind is calmed down, one goes back and prays the 18 blessings. Okay. I mean, fair enough, right? In other words, like as long as you're calm. And then the gloss says, and if one did not go back to pray, it is considered as if one forgot to pray entirely. Sure, sure. Okay. I mean, again, it's like, look, the larger idea here is that prayer should be as common to an observant Jew as, let's say, um, brushing your teeth. Meaning, like in other words, it's a habit like everything else. Okay, what happens if you forget to brush your teeth in the morning or you forget to brush your teeth at night? Not very much, unless you keep forgetting it day after day after day. Maybe, I mean, like, so, like, in other words, it's like if you fall asleep without brushing your teeth, like, it's not the end of the world. You just sort of do it again when you get the chance, right? And missing a day here and there, or missing one brushing, the one time brushing one's teeth is not going to, ruin your teeth. Um, so it's that sort of thing. But, like, in other words, like forgetting to brush your teeth, the idea is that forgetting to brush your teeth is kind of like forgetting to pray. It's like it's what you do, right? It's what you do on a regular basis. So that it should be as common to you as that. Um, when I work with bar mitzvah students, when I tutor them, and I talk to them about how important it is to practice regularly, and how I tell them oftentimes that like it is way better to practice for 10 minutes every day than to practice an hour once a week. Right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that.
Much better to do the former, right?
Yeah.
And so what I often say is that, like, that this should be like brushing your teeth. Right? In other words, okay, if you miss a day, if things get crazy, okay, it's not, you can probably you can get away with that. But if you go a long time without brushing your teeth will suffer and people will notice. So, that's sort of that's the kind of comparison I want to look at in terms of prayer. Not that people will notice if you're not praying, but I think but it will have but it's going to have like a major effect on, the impact that prayer has in your life if you get out of the habit. So I think that's sort of part of the larger issue, is that not so much that it's the end of the world if you forget to do something, or if you only do part of something, or if circumstances are dire and you only say 2 sentences and then have to run. That's not so much the problem. The idea is that it's as much as your typical habits that, if you miss it or if you have to shorten it, okay, that doesn't mean that you then lose the opportunity or privilege to do this the rest of your life. You can always pick it up again.
And is this supposed to be done out loud, or can it be either you got to memorize, you can say it in your head, or you can read it if you're, got a prayer book or something that you can read it?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the assumption of people's proficiency is. In other words, does Joseph Caro think that the people who were following this, did Joseph Caro seem to think that all these people had this, memorized, or was he under the impression that it was not, that it wasn't memorized? Like, I mean, like, it's hard. Like, I don't really know.
Well, if you do it on the run, You have to have it memorized
You have
because
to.
you don't have time to get a prayer book out, right?
And
Sure.
it's not like they had printing presses or little miniature prayer books they were carrying around.
Right.
But do
This
you
is
have to do it out loud? I'm imagining being on a bus in Israel riding around and everybody's sitting there saying prayers out loud and I'm just sitting there lost. Or do it sound
so
regardless of whether you're reading or not?
so
Not
the
gonna
the,
happen. It's a
the
very
idea
secular place.
yeah, so the idea is that you pray it loudly enough so that you can hear it but that others can't.
Does that mean silently?
Not quite. Like almost. Like, I mean, to say something to yourself, like, I mean, let me see if I can, depict this, right? Like if I'm, Baruch atah, like in other words, like where you can hear yourself saying it.
I've been with people who do that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have
I mean, so it's not
cousins
so
who, do every prayer whenever, and they just do it, and but they're not like you just did. They're not like yelling it out loud. They're just
right, right. In other
doing
words,
their thing.
I mean, look, obviously, like I'm, right in front of a microphone. So if I'm saying this quite like a Shema Yisrael, I don't know, you can hear me saying that. But the idea is that um, if you're standing, I mean, that's in case where but I've got a microphone right here. So, but like if you're in the same room and let's say but you're sitting 5 feet away from me, um, it should be soft enough that you can see that I'm saying something, or maybe you can even hear that I'm making sounds, but you can't make out what I'm saying.
Okay. I've had that
Uh,
experience many times. Yes, actually.
yeah, yeah. So um, in other words, like if you're trying to, yeah. I think that's the best way I could put it. Um, so. So yeah. So yeah. Hopefully to answer your question, Will, it's the idea that it's not entirely silently, but a a minimal volume.
Okay, it's not like I've not been to an Orthodox service. I've been to a Bible house, but not to service. But I've been seen videos and everybody. Well, you don't see where the women are, but you see the men. They're all reading from a prayer book in Hebrew, and I don't know if I guess they're on the same somewhere close to the same page, but they're all moving around and reading
Yeah.
separately. It's loudly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've talked about this before. I mean, I would say that uh, I'm not a huge fan of when people are like if they're if we're at the part of individual prayer and you can hear from you know many feet away every word that they're saying. It kind of it's not a good look. Sometimes it kind of feels like a little bit of showing off, to be honest, where it's like like I mean it can feel that way sometimes, whether they mean to show off or not. I'm not saying that they're trying to get attention. I think I've told this story before, but like there was this one person who just nice guy. I knew him in seminary. Nice guy. Um, he did not realize, I think, how loud his voice is. And he had this part, like there's this part of there are these passages leading up to the Amidah, in which the word emet, meaning truth, is mentioned a bunch of times in a row, or a bunch of times like in a short period of time. And he just loved saying that, Emmet, and then, but so the way he would say it, go Emmet, 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 and you could hear him like from across the sanctuary. And hey, it's like it's like I wanted to go up to him and say, "Hey, what's your favorite baseball team?" The Mets. No, I mean,
Oh,
I just,
God.
I want. No, sorry, I just
I'm
wanted
glad
to.
the coffee went down before you said that.
Yeah, sorry. So it's like, it's like, okay, I mean, and again, I don't think he was trying to show off. I don't think he was trying to like, just like, hey, everybody, look at me, look at how pious I am. I
He
no,
just
like
gets excited.
he's excited, and it's like okay, at a certain point, like they just calm down a little. I mean, like I don't know, like we're a congregation, right? I mean, I think it's different if their voice is unpleasant. Because I've uh, and look, and I say this as someone who, look, I mean, I mean, I feel like I can, you know, uh, lead a service, reasonably enough, but I mean, no one's going to mistake me for, a great cantor or anything like that. And so, but every once in a while, it's like I'll be in services and there's somebody who is positively tone deaf and singing loudly.
Mm.
And, uh, you know, and it's like, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. Like, it's okay. But like, you just kind of sit there going like, it's just, it can get a little awkward. I'll put it that way. Um,
You can't really say to a congregant, your voice is terrible. You're not in tune. Can you sing a little lower? You really
yeah,
can't
you
do
can't, you
that.
can't really do that. I mean, there,
Pray,
there,
pray a little softer. Yeah.
there
That's the
was,
rabbi's job, isn't it?
maybe, I don't know. I mean, like there was a woman who, in a not at Heskamuna, a different congregation where it was, where this woman would, she didn't come very often, but when she came, she was in the front row, and when she sang, the entire sanctuary could hear her loud and clear, and it was literally throwing everybody off. And you just gotta kind of go, okay, let's all sing a little louder so we can keep everybody in tune. Like it's just, uh, it's not their fault. Oh no, okay. That probably not the nicest thing. I'm sorry. Okay. All
Poor
right. So,
buddy.
so one who leaves to travel should pray, may it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, that you lead us to peace, etc. These are the opening words of what is known as Tefillat Haderech, the prayer of the wayfarer, the prayer of the traveler. So these are the beginnings of it. I have a funny story about this in a second. And one must say it in plural language, and if it is possible, one should refrain from going while one says it. In other words, you got to wait until you're actually in motion. And if one was riding, one need not dismount. But all right, but if it's already, I mean, if it's already in motion, then fine. So
So I can't, Rabbi, I can't see somebody sitting on a horse saying the Tefillat HaDerech and pulling out a prayer book to do it. They had to know those prayers.
They knew them, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the soldiers now. Like they're carrying this body out of Gaza and they're all praying together. They weren't reading books. And even the hostages, I don't know if you've read any of the accounts, but they got through a lot of it by praying. I mean, or like they'd be together and one of them would know the prayers and they tried to keep track of time and ritual, and they know them because
Right.
it's such a common thing, I mean, I don't know maybe every word of the whole prayer book, but the basic stuff.
What's
They just know
interesting
them.
about it is what I've heard and read is that most Jews in Israel are secular.
I
The
know
Orthodox
there
are
are
very
many Jews in
small
Israel who are
part.
secular, yes.
And there's a very, small percentage that are Orthodox, and then you got whatever in between. I mean, they're
You
not
know what?
Orthodox, but they're not secular. But yet, like you were saying, but they still all know the prayers. It wasn't like this was just the Orthodox guys carrying them out.
I mean, there are some who are like like we have a very good friend who stayed with us a couple times here. Who's so we went to his house for what he calls Shabbat dinner because they make every Friday night the family gets together. So he wanted to do the prayers just because we were there because they don't do them. None of them could remember with the blessing over the wine what came after Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. They were all like searching for the Bori Pri Hagafen. I mean, it was like, but. But I mean, even secular Israelis, I mean, they're like super, super, super secular. But I mean, even secular Israelis know the basic stuff and they have Shabbat, they do Shabbat dinner and they say the blessings, and it's just different than here. It's not,
Yeah.
they don't belong to congregations like we do. It's just a whole different thing. They
Yeah,
just,
and
it's just
sorry, go
different.
finish up.
No, done.
And no, I was just going to say, and they study the Bible in school. So the Bible, even if it's not religious, it's cultural for them. So they know they know the Bible as well as, people
Exactly.
who are religious because they're studying it as literature. So, no.
Right. And
Maybe not the
yeah.
prayers, but the Bible.
Yeah,
So
it's just
so
different.
so every when I work in every July at Camp Ramad de Rome, there's always a day that's known as Yom Yisrael, in which Israeli life and culture is sort of especially celebrated, and the and so my role there is, as one of the Yahoo teachers, I do like Judaic, teaching, etc. On Yom Yisrael, instead of the regular lesson, you have, Israeli counselors. We do like a panel discussion, in which the Israeli counselors talk to some of the kids about Israeli daily life. And one thing that I remember is, some of these Israelis are, completely secular in their own practice. And so, but a couple of them it's like, what's Friday like for you? What's, leading up to Shabbat. And a lot of them say, like, especially if they don't have to go to school on Fridays, which some of them don't,
Right.
they're like, oh, we go to the beach. We go to the beach, but we have to hustle to make it home for Shabbat.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like okay, but we're doing Shabbat dinner, like that's
Everybody
happening.
does that, even if they can't remember the blessings, they have Shabbat dinner.
Yeah.
And and since October 7th, everybody lights candles, even if they didn't do it before.
Yeah.
Right.
And I used to stay on a secular kibbutz, and still we did Friday night dinner and we did all the prayers, right?
Yeah.
It was a secular kibbutz.
It's just it's just different. I mean, I know someone there who's originally from Ohio, and when she lived here, she kept kosher, and then she's been in Israel now, I don't know, like 16 years, and she met Aliyah, she got married recently to an Israeli, yada yada. Anyway, and she stopped keeping kosher when she got to Israel. I mean, she eats, like stuff she wouldn't eat when she was here, because she said when you're in Israel, you don't have to keep kosher to be Jewish. I mean, it's sort of like it didn't need to be part of her identity, was a given, I guess. I I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I'm just saying that was her
That was her approach.
logic.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I don't know.
Some people think that living in Israel is good enough and that everything else is not important anymore. Yeah. So, but I don't agree with that, certainly. But
No, I'm I don't know. I could live there. I don't think my husband could never learn Hebrew, but it's too late for this. But
I thought I
my
was
happy
there
place.
at one point. I really wanted to make Aliyah and live on a kibbutz.
So what happened?
I decided that I wasn't quite a kibbutznik. I needed more independence than I would have had on a kibbutz. So,
Well, that's getting way off the subject, but you got my interest up. What is if you just speak English, is that pretty much fine in Israel, you need a little conversational Hebrew.
Yeah.
Look, anecdotally, my understanding is, and by the way, it's all good to talk about this stuff. I mean, I mean, it's all good. Um, Anecdotally, one thing I've learned is just from times I've been in Israel is that um, you can get away
You can.
with not with your Hebrew not being very good, but it's not ideal and it's not easy.
Right.
There is I remember when I was there, gosh, this was like more than 20 years ago. I heard about something called there was a website, maybe it still exists, called Janglo.com. And and Janglo, it stood for Jerusalem Anglos, meaning
Uh-huh.
people in Jerusalem who had made Aliyah from countries where they speak English.
Yeah.
Right.
So, in other words, it was to basically to help, and where they would all kind of help each other out with, general things, whether it was social, whether it was, helping people fill out forms or,
Yeah.
everything like that,
Fill out forms. Yeah. I mean,
and
almost everyone speaks English, but filling out forms would be a whole different thing. Yeah.
It's
sure,
yeah, it's hard.
like, filing your taxes. I mean,
Right.
or
Oh my God.
whatever it is, like,
Never thought of that.
so it, like, in other words, like, making sure that you're kind of up to date with stuff. And uh, people who are, so in other words, it was this way for Americans, Canadians, South Africans, Australians, Britons, Irish,
And
people
there are
from
more and
Ireland. I mean,
more there because they're fleeing some of those places. I mean,
yeah,
number of
yeah,
Olim, we meant French Olim and British. I mean, they're
Yeah.
getting out of Dodge while it's just, yeah, they're getting out of Dodge.
yeah,
No,
yeah. And so I remember having a conversation with somebody who was saying that, like, somebody who had made Aliyah
Yeah.
and who said he's like, well, my Hebrew's not the greatest, but I'm trying, and I feel like I ought to try. I feel like I really, it's like, like, why wouldn't you at least, attempt at, at fluency? Look, if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but you just do what, you do what you can. So, but he just knew that there are some people who don't really, they rely entirely on their um English speaking friends in
Yes.
order to get by.
People live in communities with other people who speak the same language.
Yeah. The kibbutz
Lots.
that I went to, there were a lot of Russian Jews. They were very Zionist. And the first time I went, I did not realize that they would not respond to me when I spoke English. So I learned to speak Hebrew better very quickly
I bet.
because I couldn't get an answer to a question if I tried in English. They would just look at me and not answer. So
Yeah, I
It
found that in
probably wouldn't
Germany.
happen now.
I lived in Germany 3 different times, from like when I was in high school until I got out of the army the last time, and I came back in '78. And the shopkeepers could usually, speak a little bit English, but if you wanted to speak to somebody, your age or whatever, when I was in high school, I wasted the entire. Well, I wasn't in high school. I guess I was a freshman in high school. We had a German friend who used to come up to the American housing all the time, and we'd go to town. He would translate for us because he wanted to practice his English with Americans, and we wanted to be able to know what's going on with. So we never bothered to learn German. But when I went back, I took a German class each time, and I found that, being brutally honest, if I wanted to talk to a girl, if you made the effort, uh, or trying to speak German and you were stumbling through it, then if she wanted to talk to you, she spoke fluent English. If she didn't want to talk to you, she didn't understand any English. But they all took, 12 years of English all the way through school. So they all were fluent in English if they were like, well, my age or younger at that time, so they were probably, say, I wasn't 30, but say 30 and younger, everybody spoke fluent English if they wanted to talk to you. Now, the older generation might just know enough just to get by to be able to, sell you a meal or, sell you something or just be friendly. But everybody, like, 30 down, when I was 30 down, all were fluent in English.
Yeah, yeah. When I was there more than 20 years ago, my wife at the time, one time, when we were ordering, she went up to the counter of a restaurant to order food, and she starts doing it in Hebrew, and the person taking the order, like many Israelis, when they hear Americans try to speak Hebrew,
Yeah.
responded in English.
Yeah.
They do.
And so then she said in Hebrew, I'd like to try to practice my Hebrew if that's okay. And then he responded in English, okay, I'd like to practice my English with you. And she said, she's like, okay, great. So they made an arrangement. I mean, like I thought that was pretty neat.
It is, yeah.
So it's like, okay. I mean, like, there are times where, where you'd have, where it's like if you go up to a Hebrew speaker and you're trying to say something in Hebrew in Israel, they'll just say, "Okay, fine, we'll just talk in English. Come on, speak
for
English."
sure in Tel Aviv and even in Jerusalem, that's absolutely the case. When they hear you struggling with Hebrew, they switch to English immediately.
Yeah,
but that was not true on that kibbutz.
That was probably a while ago too, right?
Yeah, it was 86 and 88.
Yeah, more people have learned English since then.
Yes.
And then there's the Russian speakers.
Oh yeah.
And for my Russian is a whole lot better than my Hebrew, so that's actually kind of fun for me when I go to Israel. I get to speak Hebrew. I mean, I get to speak Russian.
Yeah.
But the Russian speakers, don't necessarily speak anything else. I don't know. So it's interesting.
But they've not gotten there recently, have they? They've kept speaking Russian whenever they got there?
I'm sorry, what? No, when they got there, they spoke Russian. Some of them speak some
English, that's been
they don't speak a whole lot of Hebrew.
They've not come recently, have they?
No, I don't know. Some have been there a long time. Some have just gotten there recently. Then they're Ukrainians and,
Some of the Russians came at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
There's a whole neighborhood in Haifa called the Russian Hill.
Yeah.
And like the store names are in Russian.
I mean, there's people from all over the world there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Well, let's so next week I will be in Knoxville. So you are welcome to come in to the synagogue and learn with us there. Of course, I will still be on Zoom, so feel free either way next Wednesday.
Yeah. Well, I plan to join you in person.
Awesome. All right. Well, very good. We'll have a good week, everybody, and stay warm. And I'll be in Knoxville starting Friday afternoon.
It's actually pretty nice out, I have to say.
Yeah, it's cold, but
it's sunny. It's nice. It's going to snow again on Friday and Saturday, but maybe it appears. But
see, we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Rabbi.